ever wanted to be in my whole life was a writer. And if you consider typing that first sentence, what happens if you stare at that first sentence and you say, oh my God, I've got no talent? Then, you know, your whole life is sort of thrown over. So it took me, you know, I would sit on the bathroom floor in the middle of the night and scribble notes in a notebook, but I couldn't type the first words. Until one day I was telling that story to a friend of mine, and he looked at me in a perplexed way and he said, are you going to carve this book in stone? Or, you know, has your computer not got a delete button? And I suppose that just, you know, I thought, okay, I'm not going to judge myself. And so I started writing. It was incredibly fast. I mean, one day I was there tapping away, you know, and the next day it did feel like I was sort of catapulted into this different life. And in some ways it was a fairy tale. You know, I launched in London, so, you know, I sort of swept up Trafalgar Square to South Africa House, where I launched and carried a bouquet of flowers from my publishers. And, you know, the first evening in London with the little snowflakes just drifting in the air and the lights of Piccadilly, and seeing my book in the window of Hatchard's. I mean, that was fairy tale. I just got back from London and all this fairy tale launching, and at first it was political. There was my book was criticized for not being prescriptive enough, for not being didactic enough, for my 9-year-old protagonist not standing up more fully against apartheid. And then that started weeks and weeks of kind of back and forth kind of argument between my detractors and my defenders, which was quite hard to cope with at the time. But interestingly, it became less and less about the book and more about me, and more gendered, and to the point of some misogyny, I would think. And the time was actually quite important, because I chose the time in the country of least hope, 1966, over which the child's over hopefulness plays, and then it leaps to when she's an adult, in our time of greatest joy, greatest hope in this country, just on that cusp of just before Mandela's being released, just as the leaders are all being released, and our hopes were so great. And the adult that she becomes feels herself incapable of hope. So I was playing with the hope and hopelessness, hope and despair, and swinging between the two, just as we did then and still do in this country, rather intemperately swing between hope and despair. I think that reading is a way of sharing our common humanity. I think it's a way for us to drop into other people's lives and share their experiences and not see other people as other. And writing, I mean, it's interesting, because my book came out at a lucky time. It came out in '96, just after change. And, you know, we'd had this generation of struggle writing, a lot of which was quite prescriptive and, you know, possibly a little didactic at times. So, as a writer, I've always felt that I'm writing with humility, in a way that explores and describes what I see in the world. Because I don't think writers have any special dispensation to say, this is the answer. We don't know the answers. We're there to explore and leave it to the reader to explore along with you and discover along with you and make up their minds.